Welcome to the Leaders and Legends podcast. My name is Michael Calamaras, and as host, it's my mission to bring you unique guests and share their stories so you may learn from their journey, their challenges, but also find inspiration in their successes. So give it a listen, take some notes. If you get some value of what you hear today, please share the show and follow us wherever you're at on social media. All right, here with Emery, Aberdeen Advisors, Emery Ellinger. I'm really excited to have you today. And we've known each other for a little while now.
Yeah,
I feel like
for sure.
We met, forget through who, but it's been years.
Years.
And
Years.
I think we had coffee at First Watch and different things. And, I appreciate you sharing your book with me back then. And I really wanted to bring in here because, you get to work with a lot of different businesses,
Right.
business owners. And, as a CEO of Aberdeen Advisors, a firm that you founded, and after selling your own marketing company.
That's right.
For a pretty penny, I imagine. And I know your firm's won awards, business brokers in Florida. You have this book, you're a keynote speaker on the economics and also things not to do when trying to exit a company.
Right.
So I want to hear about all of that and share that really with everybody, really your journey and what it took to build your company, and then also with what you're doing now, and really expose others to the knowledge that's out there that you are able to bring to us. So, first of all, tell me about this company that you built before, the marketing company.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I was 26 years old, living in Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. And I was working for a big bank and then Merrill Lynch, and I realized I didn't want to work for these huge corporations, although they were wonderful corporations at the time. And I started a business, and I didn't know anything about it. And it was really direct mail for banks. And I called on a few banks in Atlanta and didn't get any business. So I said I better expand my my customer base. And just one by one, brick by brick, handshake by handshake, built a nice company. We were fortunate to win the 1996 Olympics. Atlanta had the Summer Olympics, and we got the catalog for one of the Olympics projects. And I thought I was going to be a billionaire. I was going to retire.
Yeah.
I was going to make so much money, which I didn't. That's the end of the story.
Right.
But the point was, not only you had to do the graphics for the catalog, but you had to house and warehouse the merchandise, and you also had to fulfill and send that merchandise out if somebody ordered it. So we needed a 1-800 number. We needed a warehouse for the materials. And that's really how I got into these other businesses. I called the telemarketing company and said, I need you to take 1-800 calls. How much will it cost? And I think they said $25,000 or $50,000, startup fee, and then, $1.50 a call or a minute. And I was, probably 28, 29, something like that, years old, and I didn't have that kind of money. So I didn't quote unquote start a telemarketing company, but I said, we can get some phones in here and we can ship the product. And fast forward, we did the Olympic catalog. We did the Atlanta Braves baseball teams catalogs. We did a lot for Turner Broadcasting and their different CNN news. And
nice.
So I ended up having these three companies that were related, a direct marketing agency, a telemarketing company, and a mailing and fulfillment company. So that's what I built.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you felt like you learned from that experience that you try to teach others?
God, great question. When you say teach others, what do I try? I should try to teach others, but maybe that's what I'm doing here today. But I would say, I didn't inherit, a lot of money or any money. So I had to make this happen. And I was fortunate because I didn't know anything about it, didn't have any money, and I had to make it work. And so I didn't take, no. I mean, people, I remember I called an ad agency in Atlanta and I said, oh, we have this mailing business. And he said, do you do fulfillment? And I was like, Yeah, we can do that. What, and I was like, what is it? And they
Yeah.
were doing these sweepstakes and they needed a company to send, these sandwich keepers, these little Tupperware sandwich
Oh,
keepers. It was
wow.
for a bread company. It was for Wonder Bread. And it was a big sweepstakes and people sent in their sweepstakes and we keyed it in and we sent them a sandwich keeper. Well, that sounds pretty easy. Well, all of a sudden, we have like 2 offices or 3 offices with maybe 3 or 4 people at the time, and all of a sudden this 18-wheeler pulls up to our office building, which was not set up for 18-wheelers. And they said, I have a delivery. Our marketing company was called Aberdeen Marketing. I said, I have a delivery for Aberdeen Marketing. We're like, oh, great. What is it? Oh, they're sandwich keepers. I was like, oh, great. And we look at this 18-wheeler is full of sandwich, this Tupperware. We're like, we had no place to put it. And so we ended up renting some space and literally spent the whole afternoon unloading it. And I was in a suit. My partner was in a suit. And we were
Just
taking off
shuffling them
these
off.
sandwich keepers. And then like 2 days later, trucker comes up. He goes, I have delivery for Aberdeen Marketing. I said, okay, great. And it was another 18-wheeler and it was full. And there was another 18-wheeler coming.
Oh,
And
God.
so like in stress, we
Just
called a
yeah.
fulfillment company in Atlanta. We called probably several, and they let us warehouse the rest of them out there, and they fulfill. We would
Right.
key it in, bring them the labels, they would fulfill it, and then ultimately we built our own fulfillment story. But that was a don't say no. We made it happen, and it helped us build
Yeah.
a whole business around.
Forced to make it work.
Yeah, so that was it.
What a story.
Yeah, but we went through all the ups and downs of
Yeah.
recessions and, losing big clients and, partnerships and everything else. So there are a lot of lessons. You can't read
Yeah.
about it. You can read about it in the book, but unless you've
Yeah.
lived it, a lot of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I like your story also about like getting the one big deal. And I figured it early in my career, I had these few like deals I was working on. I'm like, I'm gonna get this deal. It's gonna be great. And then you get it, and you're like, yeah, there's a lot more that goes into this. My net income is not really that great off of this. There's plenty more I gotta do to get where I want to be. And that's sort of like me as a mid 20s. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'll just make this one thing happen. It'll be
Right.
great. Right now,
Right.
it takes a lot more work than that. It takes a lot more work than that. So you mentioned, or in your book and in your firm, your focus is, ideally 5 million in revenue plus. What makes 5 million the threshold in mid market? And I've seen a few different mid market thresholds for different companies that focus in that space, right? From being I'm
Right.
a small business to a mid market business.
Right.
What are some of your philosophies around that, and what makes sort of that an ideal threshold to be,
Ye
working in a different
Yeah, great question. Yeah,
transaction
so we're
set?
selling our Aberdeen Advisors sells companies, that's all we do.
Yeah,
All our people have built companies and sold them, all different kind of companies, and so we help business owners get the maximum amount they can for their business, and the reason that business size is if you go really small, much smaller, uh, a lot of times you're selling a job, not a business.
right.
And as you get to a bigger company, you have bigger scale, you have more management, hopefully better financials. So it's got more critical mass. It's not necessarily easier, but they're more valuable.
Sure.
And so just uh, I didn't want to compete with the Goldman Sachs of the world, the Raymond James of the world. We don't, we take the stuff that they're not going to even bother with, but they're decent sized companies. So I think it's a more complex sale because it could
Sure.
include multiple divisions, real estate, um, and bigger. They're bigger deals, and there's more money out there in private equity and the
Yeah.
family offices that are buying. Most of them want bigger businesses.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hear regularly from people like I'll get this business in a place where I don't have to run it. I usually hear also from owners that have had companies for a long time that really never happens, but
Right.
there's some things in place that are helping them to take them out of the job and work on the company
Right.
versus, in the trenches, even though they've done all that work, right?
Right. Right.
Well, very cool. So what made you jump in and start Aberdeen Advisors? And
Well,
where did Aberdeen come from? Because I know you mentioned Aberdeen
yeah,
marketing, right,
right.
before.
Yeah, so Aberdeen, the name came from, I'm 26 years old. I've moved back in with my parents. Exciting thing to do when you're a single young man. But that, again, I didn't have bootstrap the business, and we're around the dining room table. I'm one of 5 kids, mother, father, brothers and sisters, and my sister had gone to Aberdeen, Scotland, to University of Aberdeen for a year abroad. And so my brother said, "Why don't you call it Aberdeen marketing?" And I was like, boom, done. And that's how we got it. And
Yeah.
then, fast forward 2008, when I started Aberdeen Advisors, I looked for the domain name and it was available. And I said, okay, I'm going
We
to
got it.
love the name Aberdeen, and I feel like
That's
it,
awesome.
gives you broad. You can change the business if you want,
Yeah.
and it gives you some
Make
flexibility.
decisions quick and go with it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I love it. So, yeah, what got you into this, after you had your marketing businesses?
Yeah,
What brought you to really do this
right.
work?
Yeah, good question. So what happened was, again, started with a partner and, just built the company, and we went from 5 employees to 10 to 20 to 30 to 50 to 100 to a couple hundred. And it was always, generally a very lucrative business. But as we had 200 employees, it kind of was a pain.
Mm.
And, I always say, be careful what you wish for. Oh,
Yeah,
we're going to get bigger. We're going to get bigger. But it wasn't as fun at 200 as it was when it was at 5, 10, 20. I
sure.
think probably 15 to 20, 25 employees. It was really fun. We were,
Yeah.
things, we just had a really strong culture and we're doing some really good work. And then I ultimately sold it because even though I was in my 30s, the alarm went off at our fulfillment center in the middle of the night. The police call, the alarm's going off, and my wife, it's pitch black dark. I'm answering the phone, and I hung up, and my wife said, "You're a prisoner to that business,"
Mm.
and that planted a seed that I ultimately, um, knew I needed to get the business bigger or smaller. I was a big enough company where I was competing with the big guys, but didn't have the resources. But
Sure.
I wasn't as small, from an overhead perspective, as a small guy. And I think you're a prisoner to the business, and I was a little bit in the no man's land, and I decided to sell the business, and I ended up selling it. And the company that bought me bought 4 other companies, and the CEO asked me to kind of look at them, to see if it was a strategic fit, what I
Mm.
thought about it. It's like, this is really great. It's strategy, it's culture,
Yeah.
it's investment banking, it's legal. So it had the professional aspects. It also had problem solving. Just for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons, I loved it. It sounded like a fun challenge. So after I transitioned out of my marketing companies, I joined a group that we were owner operators, and we were investing and raising capital for a company. So we were
Oh.
buying and selling
Oh,
and
nice.
running. And then ultimately, left them, but that gave me the experience, and then, started Aberdeen Advisors.
Well, that's great. And how many people are in your firm now?
So we have 13. We sell companies all over the Southeast, and
Cool.
I've got one in Brazil, one in France, 8 in Florida, one in Alabama, and one in North Carolina.
Oh, wow. That's a good
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
geography.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't really have the plans to
Yeah.
grow. We're a big firm for what we do, but we're a very small firm, right?
Yeah, sure.
We sell a lot of companies, but we're a small firm.
Yeah.
We have a really, really strong culture. And, again, the majority of our team has built a company and sold it. And instead of going to the beach every day. They want to help other business
Yeah,
owners, and
that's wonderful.
yeah,
What are so you've been in from this ground up to 200 employees. You have a firm now with
right.
lesser employees. What are some of the sort of leadership principles or practices that you had to learn, maybe the hard way, as you grew with those challenges in the bigger company, and that sort of that you use today with Aberdeen?
Well, gosh, we always beat our heads because of our strengths and weaknesses. But I would say one of the key lessons is hire slow, fire fast. That, right?
Yeah,
Because we're a company built on our people.
yeah,
That is, so that would be one. I am such a big person when it comes to culture.
mm,
And you hear that in, like, I don't know how these Fortune 500 companies say,
yeah,
because it's hard enough to do it with 13 people.
yeah,
But that is, our culture is one of teamwork, integrity, do what you say, results. So it is a very, very strong culture, which to me is the most important because I don't have to have this company. I don't have to, sell somebody's company.
yeah,
We work with people we want to work with at Aberdeen, and we work with clients we want to work with. So we
yeah,
want to work with people that want help, that need help,
yeah.
and we do it in a very teamwork fashion.
That's really great. There's a trend. The more people I've been talking to about this, the culture conversation comes up.
Yeah,
And to your point, it is easy these big companies to say we have a culture, but is it really being embodied by the people in the
right,
workforce? And so, that's one of the things that everyone looks to strive for is like, how are we going to get everybody wrapped around a mission where you don't have to ask people to do things? They're already doing
right.
those values, right?
That's
And
right.
when I was going through a hiring process, and every time I've done that, it's like, all right, well, does this person meet these values of the organization versus necessarily what is on the resume, and then go to the resume and then
Right,
see if they can actually do it, right, for results
right.
purposes. So it's good to hear that too. It
Yeah,
reinforces my decisions as well.
yeah,
As
good.
well. So what's been the value throughout all this, like from a mentor standpoint? Have you ever had anybody that sort of gave you some guidance in the past, or I know you're obviously a mentor to many people now, but
Right.
throughout your journey, have you ever had others that have sort of been able to impart wisdom on you along the way?
Yeah, no doubt about that. And one of the things when I started the marketing company in my 20s, we got an advisory board
Mm,
together, and they were business people. Some I knew, some I didn't really. There was one gentleman I didn't know, but he was well known as, really solid business person. So we added him and he joined. He had done some really big things. So those people were, just invaluable, and they were great. I would come with, agenda like a
yeah.
normal board meeting, and then sometimes they would take us totally off onto some things that I wasn't focused on
Mm.
that they saw from their business experience. So that was, very, very valuable
How
to
early
me.
did you set that up?
Um, Probably a couple years into it. It wasn't, when we were startup, we were just trying to
Yeah.
make it. I mean, because we literally are we going to be able to make it? That first year was very difficult. But I would say it was probably like year 3, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. That's great.
So, yeah.
I think a lot of business owners are just going through the day and not really leaning on anybody else but
Right.
themselves, and they're alone in their vacuum of I
Right.
have this business and I'm the only person who understands what I'm going through. So it is
Right.
important to have people to lean on, and whether it's a forum, a CEO forum,
Right.
or it's some other avenue to have a board of directors,
Right.
right? And I know you've been involved with both those things. Um, so what excites you about M&A now, like with what's going on in the economy and in the world, in the US? What are you seeing, and what's sort of exciting for you right now?
Yeah. To me, M&A, merger and acquisition, very, very exciting. We last year was slower. It was like a 10-year
Oh
lull,
wow.
like, yeah, 10 years, because the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates. So
Yeah.
why would that slow things down? Because if you wanted to buy a company, your carrying costs got much
Yeah.
higher, and also the banks really pulled back on their lending. But this year it's been more active, and it's real. I think it's really exciting because we are selling to private equity and family offices, which are usually billionaires, and they have very, very smart people
Mm,
on the others on the
yeah.
working for them that are telling you about, they're digging into industries they want to invest in, and some of them have billions of dollars in cash to invest
Mm.
in healthcare or manufacturing or HVAC, and they're asking really great questions. And I remember I was selling this insurance agency, and they said, do they have any automobile insurance? I said, they have some. And they said, we're not interested. And I said, why aren't you interested? He goes, well, we think with autonomous driving, there are going to be less claims and less cars on the road. And so our thesis is we're not going to invest in that. And I was like, wow. And this is years ago now. And this was a really
Yeah.
big fund that had done well, and I go, I see why
Yeah.
they've done so well, because they're not looking just at the company now and the industry now. They're looking
Yeah.
out 5, 10 years when they wanna sell, is it gonna be they want it to be in the right,
Sure.
so you learn about where's the money going, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity,
Right.
autonomous driving, all
Yeah.
these kind of things that are really cutting edge. And to me, that's very interesting.
And so you're seeing all that. Who are some of the major players in that space in Florida or in the US right now when it comes to those areas? And you said healthcare and,
Yeah,
AI and all those areas.
right. Well, it's not just one. There are like 6 or 7 thousand private equity funds in America now. So that's just, and
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, we have them down to Florida once a year, and we had them in Tampa. And hey, you meet with one every 15 minutes. We have these, kind of speed dating, and they want to see what
Yeah.
companies we have to represent, and they want to, because they're buyers. And you walk away every 15 minutes. I have 1 billion in cash. I want to buy manufacturing. I have 3 billion, and we want to,
Yeah.
buy healthcare technology. And just you walk away with, there is so much money out there. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's easy to sell a business.
Sure.
That's what business owners misinterpret with that. But there is a tremendous amount of money to buy private equity. Most of the business owners, they've heard the term private equity. They don't really know what it means, but it basically, private meaning they're buying private companies. They're buying the
Yeah.
equity of private companies, and versus buying publicly
Sure.
traded companies. So these funds can generally get a higher return. It's riskier, but they found great returns, and that's why there's so many private equity. But to answer your question, yeah, there are funds that just buy healthcare companies. They're like KKR is one of the biggest, kind of one of the original private equity firms. They have a general fund, and then they have a healthcare fund,
Mm,
and they buy billion-dollar healthcare
sure.
deals. So they're active in kind of both sides of that. But then you also have Apple, Google. They're buying artificial intelligence
Yeah.
companies, and you've got the Walmarts of the world. So
Sure.
it's not just private equity. You have these big corporations that are buying,
Yeah.
lots of different companies.
Where do you see, so in your space, in the mergers and acquisition space, do you see any shifts? Have you seen any shifts from, the last few years to now? And do you see any sort of impending shifts in how transactions are being done, profitability, process in
Yeah,
acquisition?
when things quality is always premium. They want quality deals. The private equity groups will all say, these aren't quality. And the business owners, even though they're making a lot of money, they may think their business is really high quality. To a lot of the private equity, they aren't, because they don't have strong management teams. They don't have audited financials. They
Sure.
don't have chief financial officers. So it's a difference of, the viewpoint of the owner and the buyer.
Yeah.
So that's a difference.
So you're going from, I'm a guy who knows everything, runs everything, to this has got to scale to
Right.
2, 3, 10 times the size, right? It's what they want out of that, right?
Yeah.
So,
But I sold a company and he's like, well, all the private equity group did was borrow 80% of this and then hire a chief financial officer and, put everything in the cloud. I mean, he kind of simplified it, but he
yeah.
was right. But I go, hey, you had that opportunity to do it and you didn't do it.
Sure.
But I think one of the trends we see, go back to your earlier question, is the valuations came down a little bit with the interest rates going up. But what really changed in our market, in the public markets, the valuations definitely changed. In our market, the valuations didn't change as much. But what changed was the structure. And what do I mean by structure? Instead of an all cash deal, it may be cash and seller financing,
Mm,
cash, 80% cash, and we want you to keep 20% stock.
uh,
Cash, and you do an earn out if the company continues to perform. So the valuation might have been the same, but to the business owner, it felt very, very different because it was a
yeah.
very different structure.
Sure.
And that was driven by the banks pulling back, the lenders pulling back, and there's plenty of lending going on,
Yeah.
but the lenders for big companies, because most of what they're funding is goodwill. The hard assets of the business may be $1 million. If you sell it for 10 million, there's $9 million of goodwill. That may sound, to a business owner listening to this podcast, just think about the trucks and inventory. If that's $1 million, the other 9 million they're paying for your business is goodwill, or as the bankers, blue sky,
Yeah.
the air ball. There's no collateral for
Yeah.
that. If they fund that loan and that business goes down,
Sure.
they're not going to get, they're going to get pennies on their dollar. So that's why, one, the structure changed, and that's why it's more difficult
Yeah.
than it was when everything was going crazy 2
Force
years
business
ago.
owners to keep some skin in the game, and
Yes.
make sure that things turn out the way they planned on. Although lending pulled back with so much cash on the sidelines, you feel like there's still just a fear of putting all the cash into play. Is that what we're feeling? I'm seeing that in other areas. So
Yeah. I think the private equity groups, for example, they're not scared because they're paid to go out and buy these companies. But if they can't put the debt on it, they can't get the return.
yeah,
So you think about it, and again, I know we're doing on a podcast, it'd be great with a PowerPoint, it'd be easy to show. But
sure.
instead, if you're buying a $50 million company and you have to write a $50 million check, then you're going to want to get a really nice return on it. If you have debt and you buy a $50 million company and you put 5 million down and you borrow 45 million, your equity is only 5 million versus putting 50 million on the all cash deal. So to get a return, they have to get a much higher return if they have to
Yeah,
put more cash in.
yeah,
And
makes
that's
sense.
what's happening. So the way they're changing the structure with earnouts and stock and seller financing kind of balances the risk between the business owner that's selling,
Sure.
the buyer, and the bank that have risk because they're putting up
Yeah,
real dollars.
the good faith.
Yeah, good faith.
I love that. um, with if you could, I mean, you certainly could, but if
Right.
you were to start a business right now in any industry, what would you start other than another M&A
I
firm?
would love no, I would love to start a artificial intelligence. That's where I would go. I think that is going to change the world.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to, much like the internet changed, you're like, at first it was, oh, it's just a brochure on, website. And
Right.
then it's changed everything. But so it took a much longer time. I think we're seeing artificial intelligence, change the legal field, the financial field, medical
Yeah.
field. I'm very involved in healthcare, and I mean, it is going to help
Yeah.
revolutionize and hopefully make our medical
Yeah.
healthcare much, much better. So that would be really interesting. I'm not smart enough. I'd have to have the, engineers that knew what they were doing, but
Sure.
that would be pretty exciting to
Yeah,
me.
that's awesome. So you had mentioned in my notes, right, in my notes, that you talked about sort of deadliest mistakes that business
Yeah.
owners make during the process of transacting or going
Yeah.
to a transaction. What are some of the big ones that you see often, where maybe there's just like a misconception about, hey, this is going to happen? Because I see it a lot. People are, it's gonna be autonomous. It's gonna run itself one day, or it's gonna be easy to sell. Someone's gonna want this, and I'm like, are we sure about this? Do we even know what we're
Yeah.
aiming for? What are some of the things you're seeing,
Yeah.
or would
To-
advise against or to fix?
Yeah, I'd say number one is valuation. The market's going to say it's 10 million. This business is worth 10 million, and the owner's like, I wouldn't sell it for anything less than 20 million. I'm making this example up, but that is the conversation we have day in, day out. We're talking to business owners, and we have the data,
Yeah,
right? Like there is a range that people are going to pay for your business because they need to get a return on their business or they're not
yeah,
going to buy it. So I'd say most business owners, not all, have unrealistic expectations about their valuation. And that's why we start the process there
mm,
so that they understand this is market for their business. And um, if they're not going to sell for that, okay, what can we do to, make it more valuable? So that's where we would typically start the process. So that's number one, business valuation. Number two is poor financials.
mm,
And I can't tell you time and time again, business owner, our financials are great. I've had this CPA for 20 years. Fantastic. Kay, do you mind if I call your CPA? Fantastic. Call him. John's a great guy. Call John. John, we're representing ABC Trucking Company. He says you've done his books for 20 years. He's like, oh yeah, Emery, all I've done is his tax returns. He sends it to me once a year. We do his tax returns. Well, I need to know about his financials and some of these personal expenses he's running through the business. John says, you know all about it. He goes, I don't know any of that. I just do his taxes. And that is,
classic.
a classic example. I had a guy the other day, he was putting all the expenses on a project last year in 2023, and then in 2024, he's got this unbelievable profit. I was like, well, your statements say accrual, which means you're tying the revenue to the expenses, but you have all the expenses in last year,
Hmm.
so you lost a lot of money, and you're super profitable this year. And I said, it looks like we need to do, if we're going to say it's accrual accounting, we're going to have to fix this. And he started yelling at me like, it is accrual accounting. And his controller was like, no, he's right. It's not accrual accounting. So
Yeah,
even when it's so obvious that the accounting is wrong, business owners in some cases, don't understand that. And what's going to happen is somebody's going to make an offer if they can figure out what the numbers are. And it's usually, a multiple of the EBITDA or cash flow, free cash flow of the business. And if the owner accepts that, they're going to sign a letter of intent. They're going to go into due diligence, and they're going to come back and say, the EBITDA wasn't $1 million. Your cash flow was only 500,000. So that cut the purchase price in half.
yeah, yeah,
And then our sellers get mad and say, oh, these guys retraded me. They're thieves. They're liars. And I totally get that perspective. But the
yeah,
buyers are really clear in the letter of intent. It's
yeah.
based on,
That
the
figure.
true cash flow of the business, because that's going to pay back the bank. That's going to pay back their investors. So we see the accounting would be, one of the top of the list.
Yeah, that's common, right? The owner benefit of running everything through the company, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
My car's in there, our cell
Right.
phones, our
Right.
trip here was a business trip. It's all this stuff that's
Right.
run through, right? And you're like, well, I'm gonna back that all out now, and
Right. Right.
so that makes sense. And that affects going back to the valuation, right?
That has a big effect on the
Yeah.
value. I'd
No.
say the third thing would be management. And usually on the smaller businesses, husband and wife, or even if it's not husband and wife, it's, hey, I built this business and I've really have a key operation person, and now they go to sell. And I remember selling this family business. It was husband and wife and like nephew. And I go, "Are there any other key management?" They go, "Yeah, we have one non-family member that, runs the operation." So this private equity group wants to buy them. The family, the buyer says, "What do you all want? What do you see as the perfect situation in a transition?" And they say, "Well, you know, my wife and I, when we sell, we'll stay 6 months to a year, transition out. My nephew wants to leave as well. So, you know, um, John, our, general manager, he'll probably stay." And the private equity group that had a company in their industry, so this is a really nice fit. He really wanted to buy it. And he said it so nicely too. He goes, "I know you all don't think, losing, leaving the business, after is a big deal, but losing 75% of the management team, 3 out of 4, is a deal breaker for us." So
Yeah.
even though they knew the business, wanted the business, they go, "We
Yeah.
can't lose the whole, management team." And that goes back to, having, like you said, having those advisors and people
Yeah.
help talk to a business owner about, building a team that can replace them
Yeah. Right. If you want to be
or
prepared.
stay,
Yeah.
with the business with the new buyer.
So, right valuation, make sure the financials are good and the team.
Right.
How early, let's say that someone's building a company, right? And like some of those things not being great aren't ideal, but can work if someone's not looking to
Right.
exit a company for a lot of money, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, it's working for us, even though it's not ideal
Right.
because of things that can go wrong. But let's say they're like, all right, we need to fix this, right? And you hear, hey, I want to sell the company this year. It's like, well, we probably should have started this process a few years ago.
Right.
What's like the ideal range to like get the ship back on course if you're trying to fix some of these things? Be showing the right financials. Staff, I guess, could be a tricky one, but financials and getting the valuation right. Like in your typical businesses you're working with, what does it take year wise or time wise to fix some of that stuff?
Yeah, well, sometimes it can take years and years, but it's going to take a good 2 to 3 years. Like if you wanted to sell in 3 years and your financials are bad, we really need to have 2023, 2024, and 2025 really solid and accurate.
Yeah.
And if they're all messed up in 23, okay, it's fine to fix it in 24 and in 25. That means in year 26, you've got 2 years of good financials.
Yeah.
So, you can go back and audit and do, have reviewed financials, and you can clean it up, but it's usually such a mess to do that. So I would say 2 to 3 years. Building a management team takes time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm going to sell. I'm going to go hire. You can get fractional CFOs. We
Yeah.
love that
Yeah. Those are great.
because that helps a buyer because they have the CFO, and you can hire those people in a week or two.
Sure.
But you want them with the company so they understand it, and the buyer then has an option. If we have a CFO and I don't need that, that's easy. I don't need the
Sure.
fractional CFO. So that's a good solution on the financial side. Um, Diversifying customer base, that could take years and years. Like if you
Oh, right.
I have got we have time and time again, we have 2, 3 customers that are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% of the business. That may mean they can't even sell the
That's a
business.
risk. Yeah.
So because the buyer's going to say, I need to pay you over time. You lose Walmart customer and you're
Yeah.
losing money. So, but I would say generally when people come to us, they're ready to sell. They want to sell in the next 6 months, year, 2 years, and we're dealing with the accounting as it is, the management team as it is, and a lot of times, right, they're in their late 50s or 60s, and
Yeah.
they don't want to change it, but they want the premium price.
Right.
The ones that do the best go fix those things that they can fix, settle the
Come back.
lawsuits, clean the legal up, you know, run
Yeah.
run the personal things through the
Yeah. The
business.
buyer at ease.
Yeah, right,
Right.
right.
So moral of the story is, even if you don't think you're gonna sell or would want to sell, probably talk to somebody like you early,
Right,
get some of the basics, have the
right,
right mindset, and so
right,
inevitably at some point it might happen,
right.
What do you think is the critical difference between a company, that is doing, below 2 to 5 million in EBITDA to get over that hump to become a middle market company? Because I feel like there's a pretty significant difference. I know there's like a team aspect to it, but some companies they never really break through there. They're small companies and that's fine. But what is that critical difference between, hey, I'm exiting a company for an okay amount of money versus I'm exiting a company for meaningful money, right? Which could be generational wealth, right? Or
Right.
it can be really meaningful to somebody's life and their family. Have you seen like a critical difference in working with companies that are on the scaling, route?
Yeah, and people can be in the same industry and one's, struggling to make payroll and one's growing in multiple
Yeah.
cities in the same industry, right down the street. And, it always starts with the leadership, not only the owner, but okay, you can be an absentee owner. One of the most successful companies I sold, he was pretty absentee, but he had a great team.
Mm,
So it starts with the leadership of the people
yeah.
and, being in the right industry or, shifting. You may be in the right industry, but the wrong segment of that industry. You maybe should be in
Yeah.
residential versus commercial, or,
Yeah.
you know, you're in new construction and you should have been in the service and repair. New construction slows down, you go out of business or don't make money.
Yeah.
Service and repair is just, steady Eddie, and it gets a higher multiple when you sell. So I would say it always starts with the leadership of the company. And if you don't have, those business owners that are out there, build your management team.
Yeah.
That's, build your advisory board to help you do
Right.
that.
Right. Yeah, I feel like for us, one of the things I'm good at is I'm great with relationships, great with finding people that we can help. I've always been good at that.
Yeah.
And the one thing where it's like you're always focused on, I need to get to the next level, so you have to bring in more clients, find a way to scale that. But what you sort of don't realize, and I was at a conference a few weeks ago, 10X, it was a growth
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone there, it's just pouring into each other knowledge, right? It's like it's the leader. You gotta fill yourself with information and knowledge and resources and tools. And if you can continue to better yourself all around, right, you're gonna be able to better that company. It's not
Right.
just about growing
Right.
revenue. The revenue will come because you're doing everything else better,
Right.
right? Being a better leader and all those things. So, it's good to be around other people with the same mindset. And this is why this is important, right? To share
Yeah.
what you have and
Right.
your knowledge. So you have this book, Turn Your Blood, Sweat, and Tears into Cash, a guide to sell your business. And it's like a hand-holding, step-by-step process.
Right.
So what are some of the things that people can expect out of this book, when they pick it up?
Yeah, great question. Well, the first thing is, hey, people ask me all the time, how'd you come up with the title, Turn Your Blood, Sweat, and Tears, into cash? And it comes right out of our business owner's mouth. We share the valuation of their business. We think we can sell your business between $8 and $10 million. And they go, it's got to be worth more than that. I have my blood, sweat, and tears in there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of emotion in that title,
Yeah.
which, if you founded a business or you're the second owner, you probably have a lot of emotion in selling your business. So that's that. I would say another probably interesting thing about the book is I was not going to put the due diligence list that a buyer, I have a sample due diligence list in the book, and it's 39 pages of the book. So it's a lot, and
Wow.
I was like, oh, this junks it up. But I had a call contractor. He always called me when he was in his truck, when the employees weren't around, nobody could listen.
Sure.
And we had just signed a $10 million all cash offer for his business. And he called me, goes, Emery, I got the 39 page due diligence list. He goes, which one of these questions do I need to answer? And this is a serious question. And I'm like, every one of them?
Yep.
And he goes, well, I've already given them my tax returns and financials. And I go, they want every contract, every employment agreement, every lease, all your equipment loans. They want all of that. And so I think that's a rude awakening because all these companies, we've got one now, we just signed it last night, and they're on the call. They were like, we're so buttoned up. And they are buttoned up. But now they have a big CPA firm on the other side, a big law firm, and they're asking for unbelievable amount of data. And they're kind of like, oh, we don't tie that down. We don't, they thought they were really buttoned up, and it's really challenging getting through, one, getting the offers, and then getting the deal you signed up for, after they've done due diligence on you. So, but it talks about selling to your employees, selling to your competitor, and all the different things. People are like, oh, I haven't even thought about that. When your sales manager that's been with you for 20 years, you're about to sell the company, and he comes in and says, I want $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff happens. So how do you prevent that? So there's a lot of insights
Very cool.
in our clients. I've given it, and sometimes I think they're kidding. They're like, oh, I love the book, and I need to talk to you about chapter 4. And I'm like, I don't even remember what chapter 4 is, but they are reading it as we're going through the process and say, hey, this is a weakness we need. And so it's been helpful to our current clients, and also for people that one day will sell their business. Or here's the deal. This is scientifically proven, 100% of the business owners will leave their business. So even though they think they're bulletproof, they're going to leave horizontally or vertically.
That's right.
So there's a lot of prep work on either way.
I love it. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on today and sharing all this. I'm excited to finish this book, and thanks for sharing all your knowledge with our listeners.
Yeah, great to be with you,
brother.
All right.
This has been the Leaders and Legends podcast, hosted by me, Michael Calamaras. Subscribe so you get notified when the next episode drops. Share the show and spread the love. We really appreciate it.